The snowstorm howled through the northern border like a living beast, each gust of wind carrying ice that cut through skin and bone. Ilara stumbled through the white darkness, her arms wrapped protectively around the tiny bundle pressed against her chest. The baby, barely 3 months old, whimpered softly, her small fists clutching at the thin blanket that offered little protection against the merciless cold. Ilara's legs trembled with exhaustion. Her feet, wrapped in cloth that had long since soaked through, left bloody prints in the snow that disappeared within seconds under the relentless storm. She had been walking for hours, perhaps days. Time had lost all meaning in this frozen wasteland where the Crescent Moon Kingdom met the untamed wilderness beyond. "Just a little further, sweet girl," she whispered to her daughter, though her voice cracked with cold and desperation. Just a little further. But there was nowhere further to go. Behind her lay the territory of the Silver Ridge Pack, where 3 days ago her mate, her fated mate, had stood before the entire assembly and rejected her with words that still echoed in her mind like shattered glass. "I, Marcus Thorne, reject you, Ilara Winters, as my mate and Luna. You and your bastard child are no longer welcome in this pack." The pack had watched in silence as he turned his back on her, their eyes filled with judgment and scorn. An Omega, pregnant before the mating ceremony, carrying a child whose father she refused to name, it was enough to condemn her in their eyes. The truth, that Marcus himself had forced himself upon her during her heat and then denied paternity, would never be believed. An Alpha's word against an Omega's silence. They had given her until dawn to leave. She had left that same night, walking through the snow with nothing but the clothes on her back and her daughter in her arms. Now, as the storm intensified and darkness swallowed the last traces of twilight, Ilara felt her strength finally abandon her. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed into a snowdrift, curling her body around her baby to shield her from the wind. The child's cries grew weaker, more desperate. "I'm sorry," Ilara sobbed, her tears freezing on her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, my love. I tried so hard." Her vision blurred. The cold was no longer painful. It had transformed into a strange, seductive warmth that whispered promises of rest. She felt her eyes closing, felt her arms growing heavy around her daughter. This was how they would be found, she thought distantly. 2 more casualties of pack politics and alpha cruelty, frozen together in the borderlands where no one would mourn them. Then, through the howling wind, she heard something else. Footsteps. Heavy, purposeful footsteps crunching through the snow. The sound of wolves, many wolves, moving with military precision through the storm. A commanding voice cut through the blizzard. "Search every drift. Leave no stone unturned. If there are refugees from the border conflicts, I want them found before this storm buries them." Ilara tried to lift her head, tried to call out, but her body refused to obey. She managed only a weak whisper that was lost in the wind. The footsteps grew closer. A massive shadow appeared above her, blocking out what little light remained in the storm-darkened sky. She felt strong hands reaching for her, heard a sharp intake of breath. "Your Majesty, here, there's an Omega and a child." The shadow knelt beside her, and Ilara found herself staring up into eyes that glowed like molten gold in the darkness. They were wolf eyes, ancient and powerful, belonging to a face carved from stone and authority. Dark hair fell across a strong forehead, and the scent that emanated from him was overwhelming. Pine and smoke and something wild that made her wolf whimper in recognition, even as consciousness slipped away. "She's barely breathing," the man said, his voice deeper than thunder, edged with barely controlled fury. "How long has she been out here?" "Unknown, Your Majesty, but given her condition, I don't care about her condition. Get them both to the transport now. If either of them dies, heads will roll." Ilara felt herself being lifted, felt the shocking warmth of a heavy cloak being wrapped around both her and her daughter. The man, the one they called Your Majesty, held them against his chest as he moved within human speed through the storm, his body generating heat like a furnace. "Stay with me," he commanded, and there was something in his voice that made it impossible to disobey. "You're safe now, I've got you, both of you." Ilara's last conscious thought was that she had never felt safer in her entire life. Chapter 2. The Royal Palace. Ilara woke to warmth. Not the seductive, deadly warmth of hypothermia, but genuine heat from a crackling fireplace and heavy furs piled atop her body. She jerked upright with a gasp, her hands immediately reaching for her daughter. "She's here. She's safe." The voice came from across the room, and Ilara's head snapped toward it. The man from the storm sat in a chair beside a cradle, his massive frame somehow gentle as he rocked it slowly. In the firelight she could see him clearly for the first time. He was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Broad shoulders strained against a black shirt, and silver embroidery marked the collar, the royal insignia of the Crescent Moon Kingdom. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines, with a scar running from his left temple to his jaw. But his eyes, those golden eyes, watched her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Who are you?" Ilara whispered, though some part of her already knew. "Killian Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Crescent Moon Kingdom." He continued rocking the cradle, never taking his eyes from her face. "And you are Ilara Winters, formerly of the Silver Ridge Pack, rejected and banished 3 days ago by Marcus Thorne." Ilara's blood ran cold. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know what happens at my borders, especially when it involves the unlawful exile of nursing mothers and infants." His voice was calm, but underneath it ran a current of rage that made the air in the room feel electric. "You were left to die, Omega, you and your child. That violates every pack law in existence." "Marcus said—" "I don't care what Marcus said." Killian stood, and Ilara realized just how massive he truly was. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping at the foot of her bed. "I care about what Marcus did. Rejection without cause, exile without trial, attempted murder through exposure. He will answer for all of it." Ilara shrank back against the pillows, and something flickered across Killian's face. Regret, perhaps, or recognition of his own intensity. He softened his voice, though it remained commanding. "You're under my protection now, both of you. No one will harm you here. No one will question your worth or your child's legitimacy. In this palace, you answer only to me, and I say you have value beyond measure, simply by virtue of surviving what you've endured." Tears spilled down Ilara's cheeks. "Why? Why would you care about a rejected Omega and a bastard child?" Killian's jaw tightened. "Because 8 years ago my sister was rejected by her mate for being barren. He cast her out during winter, just like you. I found her body in the spring thaw." He turned back to the cradle, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I swore on her grave that no rejected Omega would suffer that fate again. Not in my kingdom, not while I still draw breath." The room fell silent, except for the baby's soft breathing and the crackling fire. Ilara stared at the Alpha King's broad back, seeing the tension in his shoulders, the grief he carried like armor. "What's her name?" Killian asked suddenly. "Luna," Ilara whispered. "Her name is Luna." Killian turned, and something in his expression shifted, a warmth that transformed his harsh features into something almost gentle. Luna, the moon itself, a fitting name for one who will grow up in the palace of the Crescent Moon. "We can't stay here," Ilara said quickly, panic rising in her chest. "Your pack won't accept—" "My pack will accept what I tell them to accept." Killian's voice hardened again, brooking no argument. "You will stay here as my personal ward until you're strong enough to decide your own future. You'll have your own quarters, servants, anything you need for yourself and Luna. And when you're ready, if you wish to join my pack officially, I will personally oversee your initiation." "But why?" Ilara's voice broke. "Why go to such lengths for strangers?" Killian moved closer, crouching beside the bed so his eyes were level with hers. This close, his scent was overwhelming. Dominant alpha, layered with something uniquely him that made her wolf stir with interest for the first time since Marcus's rejection. "Because you're not a stranger, Ilara. You're a survivor. You walked through a blizzard to protect your child when the entire world told you that you had no value. That kind of strength, that fierce devotion, that's what builds kingdoms. That's what makes true Lunas, not bloodlines or ceremonies or the approval of weak males who don't deserve the title of alpha." His hand reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was electric, sending shivers down her spine that had nothing to do with cold. "Rest now," he said, his voice gentling again. "Heal. Let me worry about everything else." As he stood to leave, Ilara found her voice once more. "Your Majesty." He paused at the door, looking back. "Thank you. For saving us. For seeing us as worthy of saving." Killian's expression softened into something that might have been a smile. "You were always worthy, Ilara. The tragedy is that you needed saving at all." After he left, Ilara lay back against the pillows, her heart racing. She looked over at Luna sleeping peacefully in her cradle, at the fire burning bright and warm, at the luxury surrounding them that felt like a dream. For the first time in months, she let herself hope. Chapter 3. Truths and Transformations. 3 weeks passed in a blur of healing and discovery. Ilara grew stronger each day under the palace healer's care, and Luna thrived in the warmth and safety of their new home. The quarters Killian had provided were more luxurious than anything Ilara had ever imagined. A suite of rooms overlooking the palace gardens, with servants who attended to every need and treated her with genuine respect, rather than the contempt she had known in Silver Ridge. But it was Killian's presence that transformed her world most profoundly. He visited every evening without fail, sitting by the fireplace while Ilara fed Luna, discussing everything from pack politics to philosophy. He never pushed, never demanded anything beyond conversation, yet his attention was absolute when focused on her. He remembered every detail she shared, asked thoughtful questions, and listened with an intensity that made her feel seen in ways she had never experienced. Tonight, as snow fell gently outside the windows, Killian arrived carrying a leather-bound journal. "I thought you might want this," he said, settling into his usual chair. "I noticed you watching the scribes in the library yesterday. This is for your own thoughts, your own words. Everything you've survived deserves to be remembered on your own terms." Ilara accepted the journal with trembling hands, running her fingers over the soft leather. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing then, or say everything. The choice is yours." Killian watched her with those penetrating golden eyes. "That's what freedom means, Ilara. Having choices." She set the journal aside carefully and met his gaze. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Always." "Why aren't you mated? You're an alpha king, powerful, respected. Surely I should have a Luna to produce heirs and strengthen alliances." Killian's smile was bitter. "I've been betrothed 3 times. Each time, the potential mate couldn't accept that my sister's memory still holds a place in my heart. They wanted me to forget her, to pretend her death meant nothing. I refused." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I won't dishonor her sacrifice by pretending grief has an expiration date." "She'd be proud of you," Ilara said softly, "for keeping your promise, for saving others like her." Killian's expression shifted, vulnerability flickering across his features. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm saving them or simply trying to save her over and over again. Maybe it's both. Maybe that's okay." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared loss hanging between them like a bridge. Then Luna stirred in her cradle, making small sounds of waking. Killian rose immediately, crossing to her with a gentleness that never failed to surprise Ilara. He lifted the baby with practiced ease, cradling her against his broad chest. "Hello, little moon," he murmured, and Luna's tiny hand wrapped around his finger. "Are you going to let your mother rest tonight, or will you keep her awake with your demands?" Ilara laughed despite herself. "She's been better lately. I think she feels safe here." "Good." Killian looked up from Luna's face to meet Ilara's eyes. "You should both feel safe. This is your home now, for as long as you want it to be." "Killian, I need to tell you something." Ilara's voice wavered with nerves. "About Luna's father." His entire body tensed, though his hold on Luna remained gentle. "You don't owe me explanations." "I know, but I want you to understand." Ilara took a deep breath. "Marcus is Luna's father. He came to me during my heat when I was vulnerable and couldn't refuse an alpha's command. Afterward, he pretended it never happened. When I discovered I was pregnant, he called me a liar and a whore, said I must have been with other males. The pack believed him. an Alpha's word against an Omega's truth. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Killian's eyes blazed with fury, and for a moment his wolf was visible just beneath the surface, ancient, powerful, and absolutely lethal. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. He will face justice for this. Not just exile or rejection. He committed assault under the guise of heat protocols. That carries consequences. I don't want... This isn't about want, Elara. This is about law. About protecting every other Omega in every other pack from males who believe they can abuse their power without consequences. Killian handed Luna back to her mother, his movements still gentle despite the rage radiating from him. I will convene the Council of Alphas. Marcus will answer for his crimes before his peers. They won't believe me, Elara whispered, fear creeping into her voice. They never believe Omegas. Killian knelt before her, taking her free hand in both of his. The touch was warm, grounding, safe. They will believe you because I believe you, and my word carries the weight of kingdom law. No one questions the Alpha King's judgment. Why do you have such faith in me? Because I know what truth looks like, Elara. I see it in how you protect Luna, how you survived the impossible, how you refuse to let shame define you. That's not the behavior of someone who lies. His thumbs traced circles on the back of her hand. And because my wolf recognizes something in you, something pure and fierce and worth fighting for. Elara's breath caught. Your wolf? Killian's expression shifted, becoming vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. He's been restless since the night we found you. He wants to protect you, to claim you as pack, as... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. It's too soon. You're healing. I don't want to pressure... As what? Elara pressed, her heart pounding. As mine. The words came out raw, honest. As my mate. My wolf is certain. He's been certain since I first caught your scent in the storm. Vanilla and wildflowers and something uniquely you that calls to everything I am. The room spun. Elara stared at him, at this powerful Alpha King, who held her hand like it was made of glass and looked at her like she was the moon itself. But I'm rejected, I'm damaged, I have a child. You're not damaged. You're tested and proven strong. And Luna? He glanced at the baby with unmistakable affection. She's already stolen my heart. If you accept me as your mate, I will raise her as my own. She will be a princess of this kingdom, my heir alongside any children we might have together. No one will ever question her legitimacy or worth again. Tears streamed down Elara's face. This is insane. We barely know each other. Then let's change that. Court me, Elara. Let me court you properly. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people learning if the moon has truly bound their fates together. And if it hasn't? If I can't be what you need? Killian smiled, warm and genuine. Then you'll still have a home here, still have my protection and friendship. The offer isn't conditional on romance, Elara. Your safety is guaranteed regardless of whether you choose me. That was what broke her, the absolute sincerity in his voice, the genuine respect for her autonomy. Marcus had demanded her submission. Killian offered her freedom, even if that freedom meant choosing someone else. I'd like that, she whispered. I'd like to see where this leads. Killian's smile transformed his entire face, making him look younger, almost boyish despite his size and scars. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Then we begin tomorrow. I'll show you my kingdom, introduce you to my pack, and you can decide if this life, if I am truly what you want. As he stood to leave, Elara called out once more. Killian? He turned, eyebrows raised. Thank you for seeing me, for believing me, for making me feel like I matter. His expression softened into something tender. You've always mattered, Elara. Every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of your existence has cosmic significance. The tragedy is that you were surrounded by those too blind to see it. After he left, Elara held Luna close, staring into the fire and marveling at how completely her life had transformed. From freezing to death in a snowstorm to being courted by an Alpha King, it felt like a fairy tale, except fairy tales had never prepared her for how terrifying hope could be when you'd learned to live without it. Chapter 4. The Council's Judgment. The great hall of the Crescent Moon Palace was filled to capacity. Alphas from across the kingdom sat in judgment, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. At the center of it all stood Marcus Thorne, flanked by guards, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Ilara sat in the witness chair beside Killian's throne, Luna sleeping peacefully in her arms. She'd dressed carefully for this day, wearing a gown of deep blue that Killian had commissioned, simple but elegant, designed to convey dignity rather than seduce. Her hair was braided back, her chin held high despite the fear coursing through her veins. Killian rose from his throne, and the entire hall fell silent. He wore his formal regalia, black leather and silver chains that marked him as both warrior and king. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the massive room. "We are gathered to address charges against Alpha Marcus Thorne of Silver Ridge. He stands accused of assault, unlawful rejection, and attempted murder through exposure." Killian's eyes swept the crowd. These are not minor infractions. They strike at the heart of pack law and the sacred duty every Alpha swears to protect the vulnerable. Marcus snarled. "These are lies told by a bitter Omega who—" "You will speak when addressed." Killian's voice cracked like a whip. "Another outburst, and you'll be removed." An older Alpha stood from the council. "Your Majesty, what evidence supports these accusations? An Omega's word alone—" "Is equal to any Alpha's before this council," Killian interrupted coldly. "But if you require additional evidence, we have testimony from pack members who witnessed Marcus entering Ilara's quarters during her heat. We have medical records confirming Luna's paternity through blood markers, and we have the undisputed fact that Marcus rejected and exiled a nursing mother during the harshest winter in decades without trial or proper cause." He gestured toward Ilara. "Ilara Winters will tell her story once. You will listen. Then you will render judgment based on law, not prejudice." Ilara stood on shaking legs, Luna secure in one arm. She faced the council, these powerful males who held her fate in their hands, and found her voice. "I was 19 when Marcus claimed me during my first heat. I couldn't refuse an Alpha's command. That's what we're taught as Omegas. Afterward, he threatened me into silence, said no one would believe I hadn't seduced him. When I discovered I was pregnant, he called me a liar before the entire pack and rejected me publicly. He gave me until dawn to leave, but I left that night because I knew he'd make sure I never reached dawn." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "I walked through a blizzard with my newborn daughter, prepared to die rather than stay where we weren't wanted. I would have frozen to death if King Killian hadn't found us. Everything I've said can be verified. The question isn't whether I'm telling the truth. It's whether this council believes an Alpha should face consequences when he abuses his power." The hall erupted in murmurs. Marcus lunged forward, only to be held back by guards. "She's lying. She's manipulated the king with her Omega tricks." "Enough!" Killian's roar silenced everyone. His eyes glowed pure gold, his wolf rising to the surface. "You dare accuse me of being manipulated? You dare suggest I cannot see truth from deception?" He descended from the throne with lethal grace, stopping directly in front of Marcus. The size difference was striking. Killian towered over the other Alpha, radiating power that made Marcus's wolf submit involuntarily. "You assaulted an Omega under your protection. You abandoned your own child. You attempted to murder them both through exposure. These are facts, Marcus. The only question is what punishment fits such cowardice. The council will uphold pack law or answer to me." Killian turned to face the assembled Alphas. "Those who vote to excuse these actions mark themselves as unworthy of their titles. Choose carefully." One by one, the Alphas stood and rendered judgment. Some spoke of tradition and protecting pack hierarchy, others spoke of honor and duty, but in the end, the vote was unanimous. Marcus was guilty. Killian's voice rang out with finality. "Marcus Thorne, you are hereby stripped of your title and exiled from all pack lands. You will live as a rogue, without protection or sanctuary. Should you ever attempt to contact Ilara or Luna, the sentence becomes death. Should you assault another Omega, the sentence becomes death. Take him away." As guards dragged Marcus from the hall, he screamed threats and curses that echoed off the stone walls. Ilara felt nothing, no triumph, no satisfaction, only relief that it was finally over. Killian returned to stand beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. He addressed the council once more. "Let this serve as precedent. In my kingdom, we protect the vulnerable. We hold the powerful accountable. Any Alpha who believes otherwise should reconsider their position." The council dispersed slowly, Alphas approaching to offer Ilara words of support and apology for what she'd endured. It was overwhelming, this sudden shift from condemned Omega to respected survivor. When they were finally alone in the hall, Killian turned to her. "How do you feel?" "Strange," Ilara admitted, "like I should feel victorious, but I just feel empty. That's normal. Justice doesn't erase trauma, it just prevents future harm." He reached out, his hand hovering near her face. "May I?" She nodded and he gently cupped her cheek. The touch sent warmth flooding through her, chasing away the chill that had lingered since facing Marcus. "You were magnificent today," Killian said softly. "Brave and honest and unbreakable. I've never been more certain that my wolf chose correctly." "Your wolf chose?" Ilara's heart raced. "What do you mean?" Killian smiled, vulnerable and hopeful. "These past weeks, getting to know you, watching you heal and grow strong again, Ilara, you're not just someone I want to protect. You're someone I want to spend my life with. You're kind despite every reason to be bitter. You're fierce despite being told you're weak. You're everything a true Luna should be." He took both her hands in his, careful not to disturb Luna sleeping between them. "I'm not asking you to decide now. I know you need time, but know that my offer stands. Be my mate, my Luna, my partner in ruling this kingdom. Help me build a world where no Omega ever suffers what you suffered. Raise Luna as a princess, and any other children we're blessed with. Grow old beside me, challenging me and changing me, and reminding me why mercy and justice must walk hand in hand." Tears spilled down Ilara's cheeks, but these were tears of joy rather than pain. "I'm still broken, Killian, still healing. I don't know if I can be what you need. You're not broken, you're scarred, and scars are proof of survival. They're maps of battles fought and won." His thumbs brushed away her tears. "I'm not asking for perfection, Ilara. I'm asking for partnership, for someone who sees me as more than just a king, someone who calls me on my mistakes and celebrates my victories, and reminds me that power means nothing without compassion. And Luna is already my daughter in every way that matters." Killian glanced down at the sleeping baby with undisguised love. "I will protect her, educate her, and teach her that her worth isn't defined by her birth, but by her character. She will grow up knowing she's cherished, not despite her origins, but because of everything she represents: resilience, hope, and love that conquers all obstacles." Ilara felt her heart open fully for the first time since Marcus's rejection. This wasn't the desperate, one-sided bond she'd experienced before. This was mutual respect and genuine affection. This was someone seeing all her flaws and scars and choosing her anyway. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll be your mate, your Luna, your partner." Killian's smile was radiant. He pulled her close, careful of Luna between them, and pressed his forehead to hers. "You've made me the happiest male in existence. I haven't even accepted the bond yet," she laughed through her tears. "I know. But you will. When you're ready on your terms, you'll let me complete the mating bond. Until then, I'm content to simply be with you, learning every detail of your soul." As they stood there in the empty great hall, three souls bound by choice rather than fate, Ilara finally understood what home truly meant. It wasn't a place or a pack. It was being seen, valued, and loved for exactly who you were. Broken pieces, battle scars and all. Outside, snow began to fall again, but inside the palace, warmth reigned. And in the months that followed, as Ilara accepted the mating bond and took her place as Luna of the Crescent Moon Kingdom, that warmth would spread throughout the realm, transforming laws and hearts alike. She had been abandoned at the border with nothing but a baby in her arms, but she had been found by a king who saw her worth, and together they would build a kingdom where love conquered rejection, where justice protected the vulnerable, and where every Omega knew their value wasn't determined by others, but by the fierce strength of their own hearts. The moon herself smiled down on them, blessing their union and watching over little Luna, who would grow up to become the finest princess the kingdom had ever known. Proof that even from the deepest despair, hope could bloom eternal.